So I can put my glasses on so I can read the thing to switch it on, and I have to take my glasses off. It's not funny, it's just... you know, you set up a comedy club and they build a cafe around you. It's so inconvenient. So I'm going to do a sort of a half-hour satire thing on Manx life. Now, I've done this a few times before, and it works. People do find it amusing. But I want to give you a bit of backstory behind it, because there's probably going to still be a couple of people coming in late. And it's a great piece of work. So yes, first off, I was born here. I'm a Manx, so I'm allowed to speak. I know how some of you know that is a thing. I was born here, we moved away, we came back, we moved away again, and then as a grown-up, I spent almost 28 years living, well, let's call it abroad, working and whatever, because that's where the jobs and all the other bits and pieces were. And affordable, good quality housing. But in that time, I was a painter for a bit, sold a couple of paintings, so I'm an artist. I was a jeweller for a while, did a course and sold a whole load of that. I was a life model as well for a while, and I was a character model, which is basically you wear your own clothes and you get paid a shitload for looking cool. I mean, obviously, you'll have to imagine, that was a while ago. And at the same time, I was doing other bits and pieces, like I did stand up for most of the noughts around the UK circuit. I wasn't bad, but I wasn't good enough. I think I was probably more inconsistent, is probably the way to explain it. But I did get to travel about a bit and see a lot of cities and towns for about 2 hours before getting the train back. And then I moved back here about 10 years ago, and about 6 years ago, I thought, ooh, I've been writing and I want to perform and I want to hear the sound of my own voice. And so I started back, I went to a couple of open mic things, and there's some out in this room. They can be hard work, because I think sometimes the people, they just marginally lower the volume when their friends are on most of the time. It's a lot of natter. That's a joke for you. And then I started doing some stuff with the poetry group. I started doing some stuff with the poetry group. And the reason I mention this is because this next bit of 20 minutes or so, if you're listening, you understand the concept. Let's just say we're having a go at the classist society rather than the community at large. Or that maybe if somebody wants to say afterwards, oh, but small town people with small town minds, they can be found anywhere. And I would say, yes, they can be found anywhere. And you should probably challenge that wherever you are, because that's the nature of being a better person or something. Thank you. Yeah, so I did a few things. I mean, most of my poetry to start with and my jokes were sort of anti-racist, anti-fascist, pro-feminist, pro-girl, pro-choice, and a couple of other things, because you might have noticed there's a certain air of punk rock about me which I just can't shake off. Something that happened years ago, and it's just a stain. And the reason I mention that is because after a couple of times doing this in the poetry group, I was having coffee with a friend of mine who I've known for decades. Oh, hi, Chris. Coffee with a friend of mine I've known for decades, and she's a working mother, so I see her from time to time when she can fit me in. And after a couple of months of the first few gigs, she comes to me and says, oh, I hear you're a racist now, Steve. And I'm going, I beg your pardon. She goes, no, I hear you've been on stage slagging off the Manx, saying they're all racist and sexist. And I was going, well, no, actually. I was having a go at, I was calling out racism. And I was actually, the thing that hurt me deeply was this sort of the Manx who hide behind their Manxness and do all the bigotry and all the words. I mean, some of those words that people don't use when they were using unironically, so that's what I was calling out, and that's what I was doing. And she was, well, you know what they're like. So, this is the set. I've been back on the Isle of Man about 10 years now, and I still get people coming up to me and going, well, you don't sound Manx, you don't look Manx, you're not Manx enough. To which I reply, and I look them directly in the eye and say, well, you don't look like a racist, but here we clearly are. Who knew? It's a funny thing about racists, that they always get really offended when you call them out for their racism. And another side note, which is always equally amusing, I find, is you can never tell a racist just by looking at them. I have some excellent examples of, it's subtle, but it's offensive. Like about 6 years ago, I was on a bus going up to Ramsey. Going to throw in a few local. Going up on a bus going up to Ramsey, and this old fellow and me got into a chat, and he was bitching because his doctor's just told him he's got diabetes, and told him he needs to stop drinking and he needs to eat better. And he's like, no one's telling me what to do. I'm an old man. No one's going to tell me what to do. And we got to that point in the conversation where he looked at me and he says, so where are you from then? And I said, oh, I'm from here. And he goes, no, where were you born? And I said, no, I was born here. And he went, loud, audible tut. And he just shook his head. And he looked at me and he goes, are you sure? And I said, well, I was quite young at the time, but I mean, it's what it says on my birth certificate. That was a long journey all the way up to Ramsey. I've had that, oh, there's a boat in the morning thrown at me more than a few times. It's always for the most innocuous reasons as well. The last time was last year. So I had this art project, and I need one of those fat felt pens. You know the ones back in the day that you used to stick up your nose, or you could graffiti the bus with, or you could stick up your nose and then graffiti the bus with. Yeah. Oh, yeah, thank you, one person, good. I know what you did in your youth. But, so I went to the obvious place and they didn't have it. I went to the second obvious place and they didn't have any. And then I went to the next place, which might have had some. They had some of those similar things. They probably didn't, but I thought they might have done. And I went in and asked, and they said no. And I was sort of like, oh, swear, paraphrase, swear, out of the frustration of it. And I was about to ask the person behind the counter, well, look, I've been to the obvious place, they didn't have any. I've been to the second obvious place, they didn't have any. And I've been in here because you have some of the things that you might have done, but you didn't. And I'm going to go down the road to the other place because I know they have some of the same stuff, and then up the hill. I was about to ask that, and the person behind the counter goes, well, if you don't like it, there's a boat in the morning. And I was taken aback. I was like, I'm a customer here, okay. But actually, in hindsight, I think the person was helping me out, because what they meant was, I go to the sea terminal, get on the boat, go to England, other destinations are available, get on the bus, go into town, go to the art shop, buy the fat felt pen, and a few other things while I'm there, go into a cafe down the road and have a meal there, because no one should eat the food on the boats. There was a joke in there, but I just need that part in there for the pacing. Then go round some of the charity shops, because hey, I'm on holiday. And then come back, get on the bus, go all the way down to the sea terminal, get back on the boat and come back here. And all in all, I probably still would have ended up spending less money than if I bought the felt pen on Strong Street. Oh, come on, that's a great joke. It's cheap as fuck, but it's a great joke. Okay, fine. Fine, be like that. I'll edit that bit out and just put some load of laughter in there. I like to hitchhike on the Isle of Man. It's for such a small place, it's surprising how long it takes to get around on public transport sometimes. But so I like to hitchhike. It's a great thing to do because I get to meet a lot of people that I wouldn't meet in my day-to-day life. Hey, is that me? Oh yeah. Don't implicate yourself. No, I won't. And some people, like Red, stop and give me a lift again. They just don't learn. But no, it's nice to be able to catch up and meet and see what other people are doing, you know, in other walks of life. The one sort of person I did notice I wasn't getting any lifts off quite early on with the old Manx suits, and I was sort of a little bit offended, thinking, oh, this is odd. What are they thinking? What do they see in me? And then, of course, I realised that most Manx people don't move more than 2 or 3 miles away from where they were born in their lifetime. I know that's another cheap shot, but it just helps build up a punchline in about 3 minutes. In case anyone's bored, that's when the funny bits happen, all right? Right, good. Glad you're on. This is why it takes 25 minutes to get to the 25 minutes to get to the point. I also like to get a day saver on the bus. £7, and you get to travel everywhere. I live down south, so it's nice to get into Douglas, go up to Ramsey for the big co-op, go over to Peel for an ice cream, and just travel about a bit. In fact, on a good day, you can sit upstairs on the bus. You know, if it's a double-decker, obviously, you can sit upstairs on the bus and you can pretend you're on holiday. In fact, if it's a really, really good day, you can sit upstairs on the bus, sit above the driver and pretend to drive the bus. Make all the noise. Look, they do say, right, there's psychologists say that when you become an adult, you forget how to play and how to enjoy yourself. So I challenge you next time you're on public transport, if you can, sit upstairs above the driver and just try driving the bus. I like the idea if people might pick this up and then there'll be a whole load of guys sitting down in front being all technical about it, going, no, it's an air compressor thing. It goes, it doesn't go like you've done it. Also, the other thing, that if the bus is quite busy, it's surprising how much room you get around you when you're sitting at the front of the bus driving the bus. Yeah, or maybe it's just me. It's that weird trick that you go, when you get on the public bus and you go, well, I can't see the weirdo on the bus. Oh shit, it's me. It doesn't work. Now, one time, a few years ago, I was down in a pub in Port Erin and I was telling some friends about my big adventure on the bus that day. And this guy's sitting at the table and he's staring at me. And I'm going on about it and going on about it. And he's like, and I'm going, what? And he goes, why? And I'm going, what do you mean, why? Because he reckons all life evolves and dies in Port Erin. There's no need to go anywhere else. And he goes, oh. And I said, well, yeah, but, you know, sit upstairs on the bus, pretend you're on holiday, drive the bus, big co-op in Ramsey, ice cream and peel. He's like, no, I haven't been to Ramsey for 20 years, he said. And I said, wow, and he just swore at me and went and sat somewhere else. He came back. I'm very dry. Ramsey, bus. Oh yes, right, of course. So I like hitchhiking. There's a lot of different people, as I said, but there is one sort of person that I'm not keen to meet. And now, I'm not being ungrateful, but I need to explain something. There was a programme called The Good Place on television a couple of years ago that was very good about, I won't spoil anything, but it was a comedy about a certain thing. Now, one of the points they made, and it was this, that if you're the sort of person that does good deeds because you think there's going to be some sort of reward or recompense in later life or even in the afterlife, then actually you're quite a mean, cold, calculating person, because what you should be doing is doing good deeds just for the sake of doing good deeds. Like that's the decent human thing to do. So the people I'm talking about, like I said, I'm not being ungrateful, but it's always a bit awkward to get in the car with these people, are the ones who give you a lift because Jesus told them to. Oh, thank you. Sorry about that, pacing's all off with my throat. Now, there's one time, this car stopped and I got in, put the seatbelt on, child lock goes, which is always a bad sign when you're getting a lift off somebody else. Trust me, there's other stories, but they're not funny, so I'm not going there. And then there's a pile of books and leaflets appear on my knee. It wasn't a miracle, this woman just dumped these things and she goes, I want you to read those. And I looked at her and went, what, now? And she didn't get it. Well, she wasn't the only one, okay, fine. And then I looked around and I saw there were probably more crucifixes on that dashboard than you find at an average Ozzy Osbourne concert. And then she says, I'd like to talk to you about Jesus. And I went, oh no, what's he done now? Which didn't go down well either. But we managed to get to Douglas. It was a bit awkward in places, because every time I went around the corner I'm going, which for a little old lady must have been a little bit disconcerting. But I was relieved to get into Douglas because I half expected her to drive down to the sea terminal and for me to be hung up, bleeding from my stumps, with her walking around in the car park covered in my blood going, I didn't want to do it, he made me do it, I didn't want to do it. He made me do it. I was only driving up the road and he made me drive to Douglas. I haven't been to Douglas for 10 years! It wasn't that much of a payoff, was it, sir? How many MHKs does it take to change a light bulb? Usually somebody goes, oh, they don't like change. You go, yeah, that's a valid point, but actually it's more insidious than that. They sent out for a consultant who came in and went, oh right, you're still using that light bulb system. You do realise that light bulb system were banned by the EU in the 1980s into a worldwide ban in the 1990s because They were killing people, they were very expensive to run, and it was bad for the environment. And the MHK is just going, well, I don't know, it's got nothing to do with me. That's the key point of this set. And then there's a guy up in Ramsey who's a collector of light bulb and light bulb systems, and he went, oh wow, you're still using those light bulb and light bulb systems. You do know that, oh, you do know they were banned leading to, well, yeah, okay. Well, look, I'll tell you what, I've got 3 boxes of nearly new light bulbs here, and I'll give them to you for 3 times the market value.
That sounds about right.
It's under consideration. It's funny because it's sort of true. I don't know if you heard this story. It's a true story. It was in all the national papers about 8 years ago, and about the old man who drove his car into a river because the sat-nav told him to.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, actually, that happened over here, and a friend of mine knows the couple that was involved in that. And what had happened was, and I'm going to use air apostrophes here a couple of times. What happened was the wife borrowed the car in the morning and set the sat-nav to a woman's voice, and then went out and did her thing. And then in the afternoon, the old bloke went out, and of course he wasn't very technically minded, so he couldn't change the voice back. So he's just driving around, being irritated by the fact there's a woman telling him what to do. At the next junction, turn left. So he goes the other way and ends up in the river. True story. A friend of mine tells me actually he was further aggravated by the fact that the woman's voice had an English accent.
Oh.
Well, that went better than expected. I haven't quite finished yet. This is a joke I tried once, and actually everyone got it. I thought I was being far too cynical. But it's you in a couple of minutes. And it's this, a potential employee goes for a job with a potential employer. And he goes into the office. It's a great big boardroom, and he's there at one end of the table, and the other guy waves at him and goes, what, pardon, like this isn't part of the joke, this is just my own amusement, because I just love the idea. Pardon, what? Oh, hang on, there's a call coming through. Hello, yeah, I'm in there. Oh, it's you, okay, yeah, oh, sit down, right, yes, okay, thanks. Yeah, don't worry about that, that was for me, not for you. So the potential employer looks at the potential employee and goes, so tell me a bit about yourself. And the potential employee goes, well, I'm Manx. He goes, right, okay. Anything else? I live in the Isle of Man. Okay, right, let's writing this down. Anything else? Because, well, I was born in the Isle of Man. Oh, congratulations, you got the job. Too soon?
No.
Yeah, well, that wasn't... Well, this is the first time it hasn't worked, so I blame you. No, I'm sorry, that's rude of me. And that's about it for that part. That is sort of what I consider to be Manx satire. We're going to have a quick turnaround, and please give all your applause for my friend Colette.